Are we good to go?
We're ready to go.
All right. Everybody in America is talking about the movie Sinners. Now, the two whitest guys in the country are going to talk about it too. Stick around.
I'm Diet Dr. Paul.
And I'm Dr. Paul. So...
And we are here to ruin this movie for you.
Oh, I hope not.
How about no, you crazy Dutch bastard?
First of all, if you're one of our regulars, then you know that sometimes we watch new movies and we give our reaction to it. We typically, and I haven't, not looked at anything online, any reviews about it. I went into this thing fresh. The only thing I knew about it was the teaser trailer that I saw probably almost 9 months ago.
Well, let's start at the genesis of this. We've been talking about this movie for probably close to 2 years.
Yeah.
We originally put it on a list for like anticipated horror movies like a year ago, and I considered it, but my sort of thoughts behind the films are much different than it is now, and even much different than when the original trailer released and then when the subsequent trailer got released. So I've sort of gone through this spectrum of like, do I care about this movie? Should I care about this movie? Oh, I care about this movie a lot. Oh, now I don't care about it again. And now it's like, now we're getting to watch it on VOD. So it's just been this long process with this movie.
I had already decided I was going to buy it. And it's basically what I have seen is that it's like very highly rated. Haven't read any reviews, what it's about. I mean, I kind of knew it was a horror film, and I did kind of hear that it was about vampires, kind of stuff. But
this was your first viewing, and I had seen it once before.
Yes.
So my second viewing.
Yes.
Sort of.
And was the first better, the second?
The second one's better viewing. I do better when I'm in a comfortable environment and like a nice TV, and that wasn't the best viewing environment the first time around. So I felt like I was more engaged in it this time around.
Where to begin?
Well, I want to begin with the initial trailer, which was mostly just him with a machine gun, doing machine gun things, which is vastly different from what this film is. So I think expectations could have played a part in some of this. I'm not sure what people's expectations were going into it. But when I went going into it, I was expecting an action movie with some vampiric elements to it, but that's not what we got. This is a very much my favorite kind of horror movie because it's a story, a realistic story where something horrific happens. It's not a horror story, which is why we spent the first 60% of this movie in a world that has no horror elements whatsoever.
Right. I didn't realize it was a period film. I thought it was modern day, and when it opens up in 1932, it's like, wow. So, yeah. I think the elephant in the room is that there is distinct, for me, comparison between this and Dusk to Dawn.
Yes.
You know, it's like the first half of the film is just sort of a straight action thriller kind of stuff, historical period, and then you do a hard ride at Horror Town, and they both, and so, yeah. But once I got that out of my mind, what I do think, and I agree with you, the best horror movies are about something. It's like Dawn of the Dead, which is about commercialism kind of stuff, or films that are about racism or sexism or whatever, ageism. This has a distinct perspective. It is about something and could easily have been made a movie without the horror elements. But a really, really strong in terms of what it's saying.
I think for this specific movie, the horror element is the theme. Because I'm not sure and if we want to jump into that now, like what this movie was about, or first, well, actually, let's pause. What's the movie about? What is the synopsis of Sinners?
Two brothers who come from Chicago, unknown circumstances, go back into Mississippi Delta with a suitcase full of cash. They buy an old mill, and they're going to turn it into a juke joint.
Overnight, they want to turn it into a juke joint for this big premiere. And so the first 60% of the movie is them coming back to town and basically like hooking up with all their old partners and posse to get them involved. You obviously would pick up some There are some skeletons in their closets, but they don't let us know.
Mm-hmm.
And we view all this sort of through the lens of their younger cousin, who's a guitar player, who's a indentured servant. I'm not sure how they would call that back then. I don't know if he was a full-on slave.
Sharecropper,
He's
which
a
means
okay.
that they live on the land and they farm the land, and then they give the owner of the land a portion, and they keep a portion of the proceeds.
So we view the story through his eyes, and he's sort of like very green and wide-eyed about the world. So now that we've got that out of the way, normally we do that. Do we want to get into what this movie's about? How you want to do this? I'm going to start with the good.
Okay.
That's how we normally do
it,
I guess. So what's the good?
Okay.
The good of the film. What did you like about it?
Performances are amazing. I think the cinematography was good. There were some points in it that I wondered. I think the director's hand on this was really kind of amazing. I'm not a big fan of some of his previous work. I think the music is in some ways one of the stars of this film. It yeah.
It's got to feel realistic. I'll say this. I'm not a big fan of Ryan Coogler. I've said this before, and I've taken some heat for it. I love Black Panther, and I think his Black Panther movie is terrible. The first one is just absolutely terrible. The second one is better, but I think he got credit in the past for attempting to do something versus doing something, achieving something. This was an achievement for me. Like, he didn't like... And maybe he found his legs in the Black Panther. I'm sure that was a difficult project to be the first black comic book movie that was like that, and to have to helmet. I'm sure that was just out of this world difficult to do. So I'll give him a little bit of pass, but he just really showed off a deft hand at this. It wasn't normally he tries to do too much. I think he just tries to put too many coins in too many pockets. And in this, I felt like he was very focused on what he was trying to do. It was still a very vibrant story, full of life and full of history. You could tell he takes a big, great care in that. But this was much more focused, is the best word to put it.
I totally agree. He created a culture and a history of Wakanda. But I think that what he's done with this is even richer. And essentially, as I'm viewing it, there is a storied history between the Irish and African Americans. And that was part when the Irish theme sort of emerged from this. I'm thinking, wait a minute, they're really playing into the Irish hard. In the 19th century, you had Irish folks that were really sort of vying for the same jobs as African Americans. And so they shared some of the similar sort of background in terms of abuse and living conditions, right, like that. The Irish had a chance to assimilate into American cultures. African Americans weren't allowed a chance to, to do that. And so it really does sort of play into that history in a very unique way. And it then also sort of this whole notion of faith, even the title Sinners, that, there's a lot been written that white culture, white America was imposed upon African American slaves, and that includes Christianity. And it seems like what he's saying in this is that what African Americans have that is their own was their own culture, and music was a significant amount of what that is. That's the thing that they need to hold on to and protect. And I think in the same way, there's a very strong, I come from Irish lineage, a very strong sort of music and culture that goes with that. So it's really a beautiful way. It's almost like the theme of this is become a vampire so we can finally bring the Irish and the African Americans together into one culture the way that we should have done at the turn of the century.
Yeah, I hear all that, and I agree with most of what you're saying. I sort of felt like the vampire aspect was not just the villain of the story in an essence. Well, one of the villains of the story. This is a multi-layered villain story here. Train.
Yeah. Here's another one.
But the vampirism was a vehicle for the conflict in this story, right? I think what it's trying to say, and I got to think my way around these words, but it's looking at vampirism as like cultural exploitation of the Irish and of African American culture, how they've been exploited. And again, I'm not saying they're exactly the same, but they're in similar ways. They've been exploited. So I love that sort of marriage and the use of music to identify the two cultures together. And I do think it says something about music and the power of music, and also something about blind faith in here. And I'm not sure if it's saying that it's got a good message behind the blind faith aspect, or if it's a negative aspect of blind faith. I got to watch it again to really dive into it. And that's maybe another thing that you can say is a positive. It's a very deep movie. There's a lot to dig into here, and I love that about movies. So it means that I get to watch it over and over and over again.
It's interesting, though, and I just thought of this, is if you think about, there's two sides of the coin. If you think it from a faith perspective, and you could build the argument that one of the brothers went one direction and the other brother went the other direction.
Mm-hmm.
That, don't want to spoil. Of course, everybody's seen it already, so I'm going to go ahead. Spoiler alert, come back in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Then that the first, and I can't smoke and stack, but he obviously sustains a fatal gun wound,
Mm-hmm.
and then he sees his wife and his daughter, who had died, like very, very early on. So it's all shot with white and bright lights. So you could build the argument that he has adopted the route of traditional Christianity. The other brother, of course, sort of has sold his soul to
Given
the
into
devil,
his baser
right?
desires.
And then at the end, and so you kind of like choose. We're all sinners, but which path are you going to choose? Are you going to choose redemption through Christianity, or are you going to reject Christianity, and God will let you do that?
Well, I would say that I agree with you, but one then about the cousin? What does his choice in all this end up saying about the film?
Well, that's not choosing.
But he did choose. He left. He left his father's church with the guitar in his hand at the end of the movie.
Right.
So
right.
he in essence made a choice. He chose the music over faith and his family.
Well, I don't know that the choice was between music or not. I think he got out of Dodge. And
I always look at it through symbolism, so I can't look away and think that there's nothing to him grasping the neck of the guitar in the car as he's driving away. I think he's holding on to that music for some reason.
I see it at the end is that he is, the other brother has shown up with and has said, we promise to let you go.
Yeah, we promise not to mess with you.
And that he is essentially saying, up to the point when things really fall apart, it was the best day of my life. And why was that the best day of my life? Because I had music and family and all this kind of stuff. And then, of course, it all fell apart.
But this is again maybe why it could be potentially a great, not a good movie, but a great movie is the extra talking points. But he's leaving his family and faith.
What would you have, if you were writing it? What would you have written?
I would have left it an ambiguous ending.
Yeah.
So the viewer can really pick out what they want. Or I'm a big fan of audio endings where you go black and then you hear something that would then lead you to believe one way or the other. Like if it cuts to black and then you hear the guitar handle hit the floor, or it cuts to black and you hear an engine crank up or guitar strum.
Gotcha.
Something like that to symbolize the choice that's made without being, just like, oh, here it is.
You're back from the spoiler recall. Let me just say before I forget, y'all need to, I know there are people that will want to purchase the soundtrack, and the soundtrack is great, but I would encourage you to try to score every Buddy Guy blues album that you can. Buddy Guy did a cameo at the end where he is the young cousin who had grown up as an old man. And he is amazing. Damn right, I've Got the Blues is probably my favorite album that he's got, but he's really, really good.
Yeah, I didn't know who that was.
Yeah.
I'm not old.
What did you not like?
Well, I wasn't done talking about what I did like.
Okay.
I want to give a shout out to my man, the main villain, my Mr. Vampire. I really liked him. I know he's not in it very much, and I forget the guy's name. He's an Irish actor. Big fan of him.
Top of the morning.
He was very charming and like the devil. I don't know. I mean, I just had to give a shout out to him. And then I got to give a shout out to Delroy Lindo. Holy crap, man. He is just...
You just said he was like
He stole the show for me in a lot of the scenes. But the acting all around in this movie was great. Haley Stenfield, the white girl, as we call her, she did a great job. Normally, when you have a movie that's a period piece and you get actors trying to act from that era, someone's going to miss. There wasn't really any misses in terms of like the portrayal of the era, especially with Michael B. Jordan. He nailed the Southern accent. So I just got to give a slow clap to the acting in this movie.
You know, come Oscar time, and horror films, with the exception of Silence of the Lambs, don't do very well. Do you foresee any?
I was going to touch base on the Silence of the Lamb aspect, and I wanted to say, does this get popped into the same category as the elevated horror greats? Movies that are not just great horror movies, they're great movies, and they have a message. So I'm talking Silence of the Lambs, Night of the Living Dead, maybe The Thing. Just like the highbrow, artsy-fartsy stuff too. Does this jump into that category?
Yeah.
I'm asking.
I think so. And I can't wait to buy I'm a physical media kind of guy, because I really want to listen to director's commentary or any kind of the special features, what was in their heads. And of course, after we're done with this, I'm going to go online. I'm going to see what other people have said and whether I'm just totally off base with this whole, the assimilation, the Irish and the African Americans and music and stuff. Maybe I will. I mean, the nice thing about film is that they give it, and you can make it whatever you want as you watch it. But
yeah,
I'm going to be real surprised if we don't get at least a best screenplay Oscar out of this, and possibly even a best picture.
If I had to venture a guess, there will be a chance that maybe we could get some
technical,
supporting actor role, Delroy Lindo, and then the wife, the woman, his wife at the end or whatever, that does the breastfeeding at the end, which has caught me off guard. Maybe from them too, there's potential. I would say VFX and SFX, but that's such a smaller portion of it. Set design, music.
yes,
Script writing, maybe somewhere in there. There's potential for some stuff. But unfortunately, I don't know that it will get a nod for the bigger things. If you want to say maybe best picture, I would agree with you if this was released at the end of the year. But it was released at the beginning of the year, so I think people are going to forget about it, as my only concern.
Yeah. Well, you know, in the Oscar, they've extended Best Pictures to 10 films. And a lot of times you can clearly see 5 films that are just absolutely okay. You know that's one of the 5 best. And then they have the others that they kind of squeeze in, shoehorn
niche
in.
things.
Yes, that's really more. And a lot of times it's movies that are more genre films to bring more genre viewers into that.
I didn't think about that. If now that they have expanded, I think that there's a chance that it could end up there, especially if they're going to go that route and they need, like, we have to put a genre movie in there. What are we going to put in there?
Yeah.
Let's put Sinners in there.
So
potentially.
all right.
So the bad. What didn't I like about it? It was long. I don't normally preach on a long movie. I normally like the longer the better. If I see a 4-hour movie, lock me in. But this was a little long in the teeth, and in a bad way. There were some scenes at the beginning where they're so similar to one another, you almost forget which characters you're with at times and where we are. I think they could have just done maybe a little bit better of a job of consolidating the two into a different visual style so that we know the difference between what's happening, or by making Michael B. Jordan's characters look a little bit different than one another. A simple red stripe around a hat is not going to change the motif enough for me to notice it right away. That was the big thing for me.
I didn't even realize that he was playing 2 roles until you mentioned that.
Who's the other guy that looks a lot like him?
Yeah. Well, it's also it's darkly lit kind of stuff. Even though, we put the blinds down to be able to see it. It'd have been nice to see in the big screen. I totally agree with you in terms of its length. Once that you have the protagonist locked inside the juke joint, once you realize that it's vampires, once you realize that you have to invite them in, once you've seen that how people die and how long it takes for them to come back, then I think there were still subsequent deaths that occurred that we didn't need to see. That we could have easily just, yes, it's sad that they died, but I just think after a while I was like, okay, get to the point. What's going to happen? What's the conclusion of this thing? So it really was kind of like that middle middle half, that middle act, third, second act kind of.
Yeah, it reminded me a little bit of Scream too, in that it looks at the rules of vampirism and really puts them under the microscope. And I just love, spoiler alert, turn it off now for another minute if you don't want to hear this. Her simply being in the building, being like, "Come get this motherfucker, come on in," was enough of an invitation for them to hear it from across the field. You're screwed. It wasn't like you had to be like, "Yes, you can come into my house now, Mr. Vampire.
You can come.
It was just like, "Come on, bro, what's up?
The buffet is open.
Oh, ding-a-ling-a-ling, someone hit the dinner bell."
That was unique. I also think the whole thing about eating garlic was something that I'd never seen.
The Thing?
Yep.
The Thing scene with the blood reminded me of that. And I was just ready for Lindo to turn into a vampire in that moment, which was a little bit of a letdown. There was one that I was getting ready to jump into. What was it?
Sorry.
No, it's okay. I just forgot it. A negative. Okay. I wouldn't, I'm not saying it's a direct ripoff, but it has to be docked some points for Dusk Till Dawn, from Dusk Till Dawn, because it's just such a similar concept. I don't think that this movie happens without a Dusk Till Dawn, but it wasn't a ripoff of like how they, well, maybe it is kind of a ripoff of how they got there. They're running away from their life and their criminal life. So they're very similar in that aspect. You got to make it till sunrise. They're locked inside of a bar. It's very similar. You have to understand that it is kind of like, is this a remake of that in an essence, or a reskinning of that? And how much points do you dock for that?
Yeah.
It's a better movie than A Dusk Till Dawn, but I think Dusk Till Dawn is potentially more entertaining. So
that's interesting. I do think that it's a better movie than, I don't know, in terms of entertaining. I think what I have to do is I'm going to have to watch this again to see what the replay value is. Because I could watch Dusk Till Dawn like over and over.
It's a shorter
again.
movie.
Yes. This, on the other hand, is just going to be one of those things that has replay value. And I think in the long term, like you say, is this going to be in that pantheon of great horror films? I love vampire movies, and I think that this is really could potentially be one of the top 5 vampire movies. We've got
I liked it better in my second viewing of this. Yeah. I liked it better. I would have said my first viewing, I would give it like, well, we'll get to the ratings in a moment.
What about the other, like this year we've seen Nosferatu, and
technically that's 2024, but that was very recent.
Yeah, but they did the trailer for this. Like I said, we've been talking about this for 2 years. Mm-hmm. And what if they would have come out the same? They're, in the same breath of vampire air.
They're still very different films.
Yeah.
They're just like different angles of the same subgenre, I guess. One's very gothic. One is Americana, sort of, I guess not contemporary, but American West. So they're very different tones.
The thing about Rodriguez, when he did Desperado and listening to the director's commentary, he talked about wanting to have on the screen the kind of character that a young Mexican boy would appreciate. And so it's putting people that look like him, have same values and cultures on the screen. In some ways, this is really taking vampire mythos and placing it within African American culture. And so, I could really think what it would be like to be a young horror movie. It's like, yes, this is really, these people look like me and culture. I think it'd be really kind of exciting.
No, I totally agree. We've not really gotten when was the last time you got a black-centric vampire movie? And I'm not saying this to be racist. Blackula. And that's a exploitative, ham and cheese movie. It's supposed to be campy and silly and over the top. And this is very much like a serious film.
Yeah, it is.
And it's very difficult to do horror seriously without it being like a supernatural ghost story.
Yeah, I agree.
So. Ratings?
Verdict.
What would you rate this?
You always ask me.
Okay, I'll go first. My original.
I'm going to give you a 9.
My original viewing, I would have given it about an 8 out of 10. And the second time, it's closer to a 9 out of 10. Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Were you just kidding about your rating? Or?
No, I think 9. I really do. I really like it. Horror, we've said on here, you've heard this, horror movies almost are more likely to be bad than good. There's just so many of them.
Especially the endings in horror movies are so, like, you can have a horror movie that's great up until the ending and it falls apart. That's like more often than not, or just they're bad. This is good and the ending slams.
Yeah. Well, just because you like cars doesn't mean you know how to drive. And just because you like horror movies doesn't mean you know how to write or produce or direct a horror movie. And so it is. And it's that people that overuse the jump scare and it's for a while it's like everything was a haunted nun or all these the found footage films, which I'm just sort of sick and tired of. This breathes new life into an old sort of myth and does it, but against this historical background that just made it sound fresh.
Yeah, it's like a vampire movie. It's a Western. It's a folk horror movie. It's like all rolled into one.
Yeah, very, very different kind of stuff. So
yeah, I highly enjoyed it. I'm a big fan of it.
Yeah,
and I think people, if you like vampire movies, if you like period stuff, then you got to watch this. You have to.
You probably have never heard of the film before. So, so it's called Sinners.
You live under a rock.
Yeah. But no, I think, go see it. Go see it with an open mind. It does sort of pull at, because, the most contentious subjects in culture are race.
Yes.
And
especially when it comes to history like that.
And it is. And so there are people that could really sort of see this as woke in some ways. And white people are not the enemy in this at all.
No, I would say this very, very, as a person that doesn't like to have politics shoved in my face when I'm watching a movie a lot of the time, I didn't feel that. I didn't get a political agenda shoved in my face. It's about these certain topics, but it's more of like a presentation of history through this horror lens than like here are my beliefs, now you believe them or I hate you.
Yeah.
Which I'm all for. So,
well, I like politics, and I like when politics is, and I think, asking tough questions and all that kind of stuff.
I'm all for it, but sometimes I want to be, if I'm going to do that in a movie, I'm going to want to sit down to choose to watch a movie about politics.
Yeah. I think the best advice that I would give somebody out there is grab a copy of the DVD when it comes out, or stream it, all you young people. But when you're sitting on the couch and you're streaming it, have somebody sitting next to you that looks different than you, kind of stuff. And sort of so you have that shared perspective. What's it like for, I think sometimes age. I mean, we are, father, son, boomer, millennial. We see things differently from an age perspective. And sometimes thinking as a white person, I'm white. A white woman raised me. I've been white my whole life, kind of thing. So to see it from my perspective and what stood out to me versus having somebody that was African American or Asian, and there are Asian characters in this, and so yeah,
it's gonna be real tough for me. I don't see skin color.
It's the first thing you see. It's the first thing anybody sees. But anyway, what do you think? Like us, subscribe, all of those kind of new age things.
Let us know what movies you want us to cover in the future. And all those good things.
Yeah. And where are we going to see people next?
At the movies.
At the movies.
Kill.